I'm glad that the ranking member has ripened the question of bribes from China. I think it's one that I would like to explore with Hunter Biden if he were willing to properly acknowledge and honor the subpoena that he'd received from the United States Congress. And if there's any comparison on the Trump policies toward China and the Biden policies toward China, I am eager to engage in that comparison because President Trump put tariffs on China. He was tougher on China than any Republican or Democrat president in my lifetime for sure. And what I've learned about studying bribes is that when people pay them, they typically want something in return. And so when you've got these allegations about Trump in China, you're able to easily compare that to a record where Trump cracked down on China. Now let's compare that to the Biden record. After the Biden China bribes, you get the Biden administration dissolving the China initiative that President Trump and his administration set up at DOJ to specifically go after and prosecute Chinese efforts to engage in malign influence with academia, with politicians, with high society. And I know we have members of this committee intimately familiar with Chinese malign influence. And we would want a DOJ resilient and capable to be able to ensure that no one fell victim to that, from the United States Congress to even service on a city council. Now, Hunter Biden had this interesting email exchange on his laptop related to China that I can't wait to ask him about when a judge ultimately orders him here or to a jail cell. Why was Hunter Biden hosting the annual meeting for his investment fund at the home of the Chinese ambassador? Seems like an odd choice. There are a lot of great venues in Washington that could host the meeting for your annual investment fund, but when you choose to do it at the home of the Chinese ambassador, that seems to send a pretty clear message that it's hard to figure out where China ends and the Bidens begin. And I found it particularly interesting that while Hunter Biden was personally setting up this special and unique venue to convince people to invest in his fund based on his close ties with the Chinese, that all he had to do to secure the venue was agree to a private one-on-one meeting with the ambassador beforehand, which the emails indicate Hunter was readily willing to do. So aren't the rest of you curious to know what the ambassador wanted to meet with Hunter Biden about before Hunter Biden used his Chinese relationships to enrich himself, his family, his relatives, his uncle, his father, to pay the bills, to run the Biden crime family? I'd like to know what was going on at that meeting.
Would the gentleman yield?
Sure.
Let me just say, it may very well be that what Hunter Biden was doing was wholly improper. It may very well be that what Hunter Biden was doing was criminal. There is a special prosecutor. What there isn't is any evidence that President Biden had anything to do with any of this.
Well, I would suggest that the ambassador from China probably wasn't requesting a one-on-one meeting with Hunter Biden to go over investment tips and investment strategies. And if we had Hunter Biden in the witness chair, we could ask him. So it's one thing to say, well, there's just no evidence here. And then when we want to ask simple questions, like, was the ambassador asking about Hunter Biden's art interests and whether he preferred oil paintings or watercolors? I'm guessing that's not the case. And the reason Hunter Biden doesn't want to be in that witness chair is because when confronted with the documents and the evidence, they are boxed in. Because everybody in this country knows what was going on. Hunter Biden was the bag man. He was collecting the money, and Joe Biden was the inside man. And he was delivering the results for China and anyone else that was willing to pay him off. And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. I yield back.
The Democrats could have sent anyone. They could have sent Hunter Biden. They could have sent Joe Biden. They could have sent Rob Walker. They could have sent Devin Archer. The Democrats could have sought any person to come and refute the direct evidence backed up by bank statements, backed up by calendar entries, backed up by emails, backed up by text messages. And who did the Democrats send to clear the name of Joe and Hunter Biden? They sent Lev Parnas. Lev Parnas, who was charged with enough crimes and violating our campaign finance laws to, serve 50 years, but he gets 4 months. And like the big like grand criminal conspiracy Mr. Parnas is involved in is using Russian oligarch money to try to get marijuana licenses, which seems odd, and then using that Russian money to plow into campaigns in order to achieve that objective. But the fraud he committed wasn't just on our election system by plowing Russian money, it was also a fraud on his own investors who didn't get it. So I guess, Mr. Bobulinski, as you hear Maxwell Frost, my colleague on the Democrat side, say that Mr. Parnas, fresh off of his prison time, is the most credible witness we've had to address these business dealings. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's laughable that the Democrats are asking Lev Parnas to weigh in on my credibility, a convicted felon that served jail time. I have an impeccable record. Now, he warned me earlier in this hearing that they're coming for me. I
didn't worry. I said just keep talking. You'll be there soon.
I look forward to that, Mr. Parnas.
Keep lying. You'll be there soon.
Well,
Is that a threat, Mr. Parnas?
No, it's just the truth.
No, did you say they were coming for me?
No, I said if you keep lying, you will end up in prison.
I'm not lying. You're the one who was lying.
You have nothing to
You're the one who went to prison
for lying. What am I lying
lying.
for? Tell me what we're lying for, Mr. Bobulinski.
What?
You don't even know what you're talking about. What am I lying?
You went to
What
prison
am I-
for lying and defrauding your investors.
What am I lying here? What am I lying here?
Oh, the list is
So,
long.
go
We
ahead.
don't have
Go
enough
ahead.
time. I
Exactly,
think Mr.
yeah.
Gaetz only has a minute.
I think you're a little scared, just like
So
Mr.
one
Gaetz.
crime-
Because Mr. Gaetz doesn't even ask a question. You're filibustering. I've been here for 6 hours, and not one of your committee members has asked me one question. You want to
Well,
hear
I
the
asked you-
truth?
hold on,
no,
hold
you
on,
haven't.
Mr.
No, you.
I
wanna
asked a
ask
question about
Get
your
to the
illegal
truth.
business
I've been here for
dealings.
7 hours.
Mr. Bobulinski,
Ask me some questions.
fraud is a
Stop
crime, right?
filibustering. Go ahead. Ask
Correct. Fraud is a crime.
Fraud is a crime, and you observed fraud on the part of the Bidens, right?
I did, crystal clear. So much so I had an independent law firm spend $300,000 to analyze that fraud and put together a fully ready, fileable lawsuit against the Biden family.
And bribery is a crime, right?
Correct?
And what you observed with Joe Biden trying to get you into this business deal with Hunter Biden, what you later learned about that business deal and how the money was flowing from the Chinese Communist Party to Hunter Biden, to other members of the Biden family, did that concern you as a potential feature of money laundering?
It did. It did. I started to grow concern after I met Joe Biden, and then I sat down with Jim Biden, and he used the term plausible deniability with me, and that's documented because I went back to my lawyers, and I asked them, something is starting to feel unright, and they went and hired another law firm to give me a full FCPA workup to go through the details of what could be done and what couldn't be done.
Sounds like high crimes and misdemeanors to me, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
With that, I'll yield the balance of my time to Mr. Gaetz.
Hunter Biden's deposition. Question. Do you think some of your business associates we've spoken about today, Mr. Archer, Mr. Bobulinski, Mr. Galanis, do you think they had an expectation that your dad had any role or involvement in any of your joint business dealings? Answer from Hunter Biden. Not an expectation from me. There was never a single time I can remember saying, hey, we'll get my dad involved. Hey, let's get my dad on the phone. Hey, let's, what can we get out of dad for this? Mr. Galanis, what's your reaction to that testimony from Hunter Biden in light of you describing the Biden lift?
I think it's patently false. It's belied by emails, and I think that there's documentation that says that that's just an untruthful statement.
And what I'm trying to understand, Mr. Galanis, is there you are sitting in a prison cell for a financial crime where you were an associate with Hunter Biden and some of the other players there, and they're out enjoying Southern California, and you're sitting in a prison cell, and they've got the ability to come and give this false testimony to Congress. Is it your belief that the Biden Justice Department retaliates against people who speak out against the Bidens and their crimes?
I'm living that. I think to clarify, I took responsibility for my crimes. I pleaded guilty. I've served 8 years of clean conduct, and I think I've rehabilitated myself quite a bit in that period of time and evidence a track record. But I would say that there is unquestionably a pattern of 2 tiers of justice, and that's become a popularized term, and it's something that I've a lived experience that I've gone through.
Yield back.
Before I recognize Mr. Waltz, for what purpose does Mr. Biggs seek recognition?
I want to include an article in a record. The article is entitled, Tlaib renews her, quote, impeach the MFer, close quote, call against Trump.
Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does Mr. Gaetz seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the press release from the Department of Justice. Lev Parnas sentenced to 20 months in prison for campaign finance, wire fraud, and false statement offenses.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair, objection, so ordered. Now the chair recognizes Mr. Gaetz from Florida.
You're a serious business person, Mr. Bobulinski, right?
I am.
Unlike the convicted felon next to you, you've served in the military, right?
Correct.
You've done big deals.
Correct.
Complicated deals, deals that involved foreign businesses, right?
Correct.
And so what I'm trying to figure out is when you came to realize that you showed up at the wrong party. Because you kind of strike me as a guy who showed up to do a legitimate business deal, and you ended up instead at a bribe. And so as you're looking at CEFC, as you're having this meeting with Joe Biden, as Hunter Biden is introducing you to his web of contacts, when did you go from serious businessman Tony Bobulinski working to make a buck in a capitalist system to a guy worried that you had been unwittingly ensnared into Hunter and Joe Biden's bribe operation with the Chinese Communist Party?
I appreciate the question. It wasn't an aha moment. It was more of a process. I am a serious businessman, demonstrated by the different deals I've done around the world and the success of them. But it started, remember, the Biden family wasn't my entry into this. James Gillier, who I'd known for over 10 years, who traveled the world doing business, kept trying to get me involved. I really had no interest. I sat down in the spring of 2017 to walk through things, and then I quickly put together two businesses, Sinohawk and Oneida. After the meetings in Los Angeles with Hunter and Joe Biden, it started to sort of, bells and whistles started to go off when Jim Biden used the term plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability is the first moment, straight from the lips of Jim Biden, right on the heels of your discussion with Joe Biden, where you start to think, this might not be legit.
Correct. And my lawyers at the time could attest to that because I reached out to them saying, listen, I'm a former naval officer. I held a Q security clearance. I couldn't collect. Somebody couldn't take me to dinner for $50. This just does not make sense to me.
But you proceed, and then later this thing starts to get a lot uglier. What's the moment you go from, okay, your spidey senses are up, you're analyzing this, to now you know this is a crime that you are bearing witness to?
The end of July, when the Biden family put them right front and center in the middle of a $9 billion transaction between the Russian state-owned energy company Rosneft and CFC, a surrogate for the Chinese Communist Party.
And was there ever a time in the deals you were involved in where you started to see the money move around the legitimate business enterprise and toward the pockets of the Bidens?
Well, the challenge, Mr. Gaetz, with that is at the time they moved the money, right? You guys have the text messages where Hunter Biden shook down Director Zhang, but I was not aware of that. I spent a year asking questions of, this doesn't make sense to me. Where's the money? I stepped in and had lawyers work to dissolve the two entities. I didn't know till years later that they had defrauded me. They had gotten paid all this money and all this craziness. The amount of facts,
it just seems pretty simple. This is either a bribe or a business.
It was a bribe from the Chinese Communist Party.
And
I don't say that lightly. There's 1,200 pages, 8 days of testimony in the Southern District of New York. I encourage everyone watching me, hearing me say this. They're publicly available. Go read them. Our Department of Justice outlines in intimate detail the corruption and bribes that CFC was deploying to political officials all over the world.
It wasn't
so
just in
I'm
the
here
United
to
States.
believe that they did this in every other country, but with the Biden family, it was pristine. It was an actual clean business. That's absurd.
And you came to know that, and that's when you blew the whistle, right? That's when you started to get worried when you saw Joe Biden.
I stepped away from it. There's the whistleblowers. I can't give them kudos enough for the bravery and the risk they put their family in. They publish stuff where I am voicing the concern of the Rosneft deal.
And you animated your concerns when you saw that this wasn't just a corrupt bribe, a corrupt business deal happening to a guy who used to be vice president. When you see that everyone's made a big deal like you're a bad guy, that you showed up at the debate, or you're trying to give life to these facts that you've observed, that it's so bad that you did that during a political contest. But
observing this, it kind of seems like it would be unpatriotic for you to stay quiet.
Of course.
And so, I mean, Joe Biden running for president clearly motivated the Chinese to consummate this bribe. Did it also motivate you?
Well, I didn't want to go public. I wanted to simply unload all the facts, personal experiences. It's funny, there's 18 people on this committee with law degrees, including, I think, Mr. Swalwell. Evidence, firsthand testimony, is the most powerful evidence you have. I've given it, Mr. Galanis has given it, along with a whole host of other witnesses. Then, on top of that, I have thousands of documents and pages of legals and stuff like that.
That's what's
I
interesting,
wanted to
Mr.
simply
Bobulinski.
give this information.
Yeah, but
Congressmen
that's the
and
thing.
senators.
No
and
one
let them
questioned
do their
any of
job.
your facts. Yeah. No one brought a single piece of evidence that even for a moment discredited any of the truthful testimony that you've given us.
No,
I see
they
my
did
time's
not.
expired. I yield back.
Gentlemen.